few months ago, the ChatGPT image generator was updated, and suddenly the internet was exploding with images recreated in the style of Studio Ghibli, with the added bonus of a piss filter that I don't think anybody intentionally prompted but was nonetheless present. Since then, online discussions regarding AI have become war zones of bad opinions and rage bait, and as a well-seasoned and occasionally viral art shitposter, I just had to contribute to the dialogue. I kept seeing this one argument specifically that I thought was particularly stupid, this idea that art needed to be democratized and that AI art was here to prevent artists from gatekeeping their skills from the masses. This is of course a retarded argument. Art has always been accessible to everyone. For free. Since the dawn of opposable thumbs, you have always had a means of making a cave painting. Go outside and find some chalk or give your unwashed butthole a good scrape and you've got a means of painting on a blank canvas. So I made this Instagram reel in which I paint a portrait using a cold can of ravioli to prove that if you've got something moderately wet and a blank canvas, you can paint something. It gave me the opportunity to pay homage to Filthy Frank, gone but not forgotten, and it successfully enraged a few prompt jockeys in the comment section. The replies I got from the tech bros were interesting to say the least, and it got me thinking about how non-artists and tech bros might be interacting with artwork in online spaces. The replies ranged from people telling me I needed to adapt or get left behind to a guy having a full-on crash out because he insisted that I was using my talent to gaslight him. Deadass, this guy started immediately barking nonsense, and I told him if he was serious about improving his art, he could just DM me and I would be happy to give him a few pointers and send him some of the resources that I used when I was first learning how to draw myself. And then he just kept rejecting everything I said, and then I thought, okay, this is somebody who doesn't want to have a dialogue about this. This is somebody who just wants to be angry in an Instagram comment section. Then I went to Twitch to stream Disco Elysium for 3 hours, and then I got into my car after said stream to drive to Chick-fil-A, and while I was in line at Chick-fil-A, I checked my phone, and there he was, still pinging me, trying to get me to come back into the scuffle. So I obliged for a little bit while I waited in line for my delicious tendies, but he kept opposing all of my rhetoric just for the sake of it, so I got bored. I then told him that arguing with him was about as productive as trying to explain the Israel-Palestine conflict to my dog, and then I called him bald. Quick toxic internet tip: if you want to upset a girl online, you call her fat, and if you want to upset a guy online, you call him bald. It doesn't matter if they're not fat or bald, it's just that most people are self-conscious about these things to some degree, and it'll probably work. I never said I was mature all the time. Call the cops, they can't unbald you. Re-examining this guy's comments got me thinking, how does somebody get to this point, and what other crazy things do people believe about artists? I would like to use this video to bridge the gap of understanding between artists and people that use AI, but for the most part, I'm not sure that I can. If you're an artist, I'm gonna hold the crinkliest part of your asshole when I say this, but there are some people out there that like AI image generation specifically because they don't like artists and they don't like that they can use their skill to make money. Asmongold clip.
And this is an issue with all entertainment media, is that most people don't really respect entertainment media in a big way because they view it as a luxury profession. So when people complain about it, they don't get as much sympathy as when like a firefighter is complaining or like a nurse is complaining.
Sorry, fellow artists, but there are just some people out there that don't like you and don't understand the work that you do. They think you have an unserious, non-stop fun time at the made-up job dick-sucking factory. They don't understand the sheer volume of dedication and self-loathing that goes into making art because it's not finance or manual labor or saving lives or deploying bombs overseas on brown children. You're never going to convince people like that of anything because they're not interested in having their minds changed. But maybe there's a Gen AI user out there who is at least a little bit curious. I think with such a strong resistance to generative AI, there should at least be a few people on the other side who are a little bit interested in making things more ethical so we don't all lose our jobs. I mean, it's definitely not going away, it's going to come for all of us eventually, but I can dream, can't I? Believe it or not, I'm not somebody who is staunchly opposed to AI like it's my entire personality. I use ChatGPT all the time as a search engine so that when I'm trying to look up something, I'm not constantly fighting for my life against sponsored ads. It was fantastic when I was using it for a little extra help when I was poking around trying to learn JavaScript for GameMaker, and when I opened my print shop, it came in clutch because I found out the hard way that in order to make a print a decent resolution, it has to be at least 5,000 by 5,000 pixels, so luckily I was able to find an AI resizing tool. I was definitely not painting that big because that would slow down my ancient 10-year-old computer. So I don't think it's a stretch to say that there might be a few people on the opposite end of the spectrum who are curious about how artists feel about generative AI. So this video is for you. Here's a few things that generative AI users get wrong about artists. 1. AI art is not stealing. Artists copy each other all the time. Bitch, yes the fuck it is. I can't believe I have to keep addressing this. In order to produce art in my own style, I've had to spend thousands of hours assessing the imagery from the world around me and condensing it into mental data. I've had to spend thousands more hours training myself to be able to reproduce that mental data onto a canvas with my own 2 human hands. Now that data is being used without my consent in a way that directly undermines my own best interests. Let's talk a little bit about master copies. When people say that artists are constantly stealing from each other, they're usually referring to an exercise known as a master copy. When doing a master copy, the objective is to take a piece of art from an artist that you like and literally, to the best of your ability, copy it. Why would you do this? Because you're trying to learn how other artists problem solve. I think as artists for a millennia, we've had the tacit understanding that we give each other permission to iterate and learn from each other's work, given that we know how difficult it is. That is a conversation that changes dramatically when you add a robot to it. This is a master copy I did a few years ago of a John Singer Sargent piece. It took me 3 hours, and even with that much time spent on it, it's still not a one-to-one replica, and it's not meant to be. I did this to fix my bad habit of over-rendering objects in my illustration because Sargent is able to imply form with a few brushstrokes, and I wanted to learn how to do that. When an AI is trained on someone's artwork, it literally just downloads the image and then sorts it into a dataset, and it can do that with literally hundreds of different paintings an hour, probably more. It's not copying, it's just taking. And I wouldn't even call that an illustration at this point. What it spits out is more of like a hybrid of millions of stolen paintings to produce a unique result. So that's more of a collage to me, but I digress. The problem here is I have not consented to have my artwork stolen and repurposed by something that moves that fast. And to add insult to injury, the tech companies that do this profit off of my work. Bitch, I don't even profit off of my work. I just like making Deltarune fan art for fun, and now you're telling me that tech companies have scraped my shit and are scraping other people's shit and are now selling it back to people in the form of ChatGPT premium subscriptions? Huh? I shouldn't be forced to participate in this just because I shared my work online to other people that like Deltarune. The way I think this should work, because I'm not under any delusions that this shit is ever going away at this point, is simple. Consent. 1. If you want to use my artwork to train your robot to do generative AI, I think you should ask me and I should be able to opt out. 2. If I opt in, you have to pay me. And why won't companies do this? Because the main gimmick behind AI is that corporations can get away with not paying artists while making big monies. This means that these large language models compete directly with the artists that they were trained on. These AI companies could license the work that they're taking, and some already do, but most of them won't. That would mean having to go back and compensate all of these artists from which gorillions of dollars were stolen, provided that these artists opt in. I feel like I'm not even saying anything controversial here, but there are still some people that are disagreeing with my right to my own work. So why is that? Artists are a very self-flagellating group of people, and modern art has ruined the idea of standards and merit in artistic spaces. Modern art, a banana taped to a wall, this lone urinal, this canvas full of absolutely fucking nothing. Anything by the balloon animal cuck. A few weeks ago I saw a video by YouTuber Gary Young VO wherein he discusses modern art, AI art, and how those two things relate to a philosophical conundrum. If artistic beauty is in the eye of the beholder, it is actually impossible to justify that human art is any better than AI art. Gary argues that modern art has destroyed all standards in the art industry as a whole, and that the prevailing sentiment is that anything can be art, and all art is beautiful even if it's a bunch of stray pubes glued onto a canvas, and AI art falls into this category because artists have seemingly removed all of their standards 100 years ago. He then goes on to do this little thought experiment on his art friends wherein he asks them, between this Jackson Pollock painting and this AI-generated illustration, which of the two paintings has more artistic value? All of the artists chose the Jackson Pollock painting, the gotcha being that the Jackson Pollock painting is also AI generated. So I don't disagree with everything this guy says, but he's also definitely wrong about a lot. So first of all, I think lumping modern artists in with every other type of artists and then pinning them to a wall with this question is a little disingenuous, because I can also play that game. I can also ask my art friends, I can ask any of the hundreds of people I've met in the throes of AAA game production or film and animation who in fact do not bust nuts onto canvases and insist other people buy those canvases and hang them up over their fireplaces. Like, I don't know what sample size this guy was working with, but I have hundreds of art friends and they all hate Jackson Pollock. Here are some of the things that they said in response to watching this video.
Regarding the experiment mentioned, very poorly done. It was a plainly leading circumstance. He knew exactly what result he wanted to get, so the experiment was set up to give exactly that result and nothing else.
TLDR, people who think modern art is good is like asking the guy who drinks piss what constitutes a good beverage and then saying, see, there's no objectivity in what makes a good beverage.
Yeah, the experiment doesn't really say much when you mislead the subjects. Almost like how online Reddit debaters try to catch you on a gotcha question.
Yeah, this sentiment of art is already bad, so who cares is incredibly piss-spray and disingenuous and shows a fundamental misunderstanding of what value people attach to art as a concept.
Also, Jackson Pollock or whatever his name is was a government sick, but that's barely relevant.
The TLDR is, the US wanted to show that if someone as bad as Pollock can succeed, that means anyone has a chance. The Soviets had insanely high art standards and forced them to be so specific that there was no freedom, so Jackson Pollock was funded freedom propaganda basically. That's a shortened version of it that might be missing some stuff though.
Modern art is just bored apes NFTs for rich boomers trying to launder money.
I met Jackson Pollock once. He kept touching me inappropriately, and when I asked him to stop he kept yelling, it's modern art, you just don't get it.
Any artist worth their salt thinks Jackson Pollock is a knuckle-dragging, googly-eyed cocksucker, and anyone who thinks that his art is valuable is even worse. When I was watching this video, before he even pointed out that both of these paintings were AI generated, all I could think was, man, I hate Jackson Pollock. That looks like shit. I like the AI one better. There are standards to art. I don't know where he's getting that from. As a 3D artist, I've only ever been hired because I was good at sculpting. Knowing people helps a little bit, but it can only carry you so far. If you don't know basic anatomy as a 3D sculptor, I don't care whose dick you're sucking, you're not getting hired. So in this example, the AI-generated fantasy landscape is in fact better than the Jackson Pollock painting and the AI-generated Jackson Pollock painting. Why? Because the fantasy landscape one is trained off of artists that are good. So again, we are working with stolen valor here. Art does have standards. Art has rules. There are fundamentals that you have to learn in order to make good art. Color theory, light, value, composition, perspective, anatomy, all of those are required. And yes, there is good art and there is bad art. Art doesn't inherently have merit just because a human made it. I still think the endeavor is cool because you tried, but that doesn't make it automatically good. Do you think Leonardo da Vinci is the draftsman that he is by default? No, he's got probably thousands of bad drawings that nobody's ever gonna see because he threw them all away, because that's the iterative process of learning how to draw, and there's nothing wrong with that. What I do agree with in Gary's video is that there is definitely a vocal minority of artists that are very annoying and still demanding of your respect, and it's difficult not to cheer for the downfall of that person, so I get it. Person that's been telling you that every piece of media needs to have its characters retroactively race swapped in order to meet some sort of arbitrary diversity quota. The people telling you that you're a bigot or an incel because you didn't want to pay $70 for their video game that plays like a Title IX ass anti-workplace discrimination training module for an office job. Person telling you that they're better than you and more emotionally intelligent because they are artists and you work in construction, and if you don't want to keep using your hard-earned money to fund their lifestyle, you're a bad person. This is where I think a lot of the misplaced hatred for artists come from. In reality, most artists are normal. They're not permanently glued to a soapbox, constantly spouting annoying socio-political opinions on Twitter. Most of us are just trying to make it, or get a paycheck, or express something deeper through paint. When working in productions, we're not the ones in charge of the messaging, we're kind of just held hostage. I was working at this indie studio a few years back and I was tasked with modeling this non-binary character, and there was a lot of discussion about how this character would look with regards to overall proportion and color palette. And anytime somebody accidentally misgendered the fictional non-binary character on Slack, they got in trouble with HR. Do you think I wanted to be in that situation? No, I just wanted to sculpt and get paid. Pandering in the slop isn't gonna go away if you drop all of the artists from the project. Arguably, there will be even more pandering and slop than ever before. There's pandering and slop being made by humans right now without AI. When was the last time Disney made something that inspired you? I know the art industry has been kind of broken for a long time, but I don't think the answer to that is fighting human slop with AI slop. When you start to replace the artists with AI, it's gonna make it so that the slop comes out faster, and there's gonna be so much slop, it's going to obfuscate the things that are not slop. It's already doing that. In the top 3 videos on YouTube as of writing this, 3rd place is an AI slop video called Lovely Baby Met a Plane Crash, Poor Pug. To say that the soul of art doesn't matter and that all that does is its consumability is just going to get you more of Lovely Baby Met a Plane Crash, Poor Pug. Which brings me to the next thing that people get wrong about artists. Soul in art doesn't matter, and all that does is consumability. In the short term, yes, that's true. In terms of profitability, economics, people voting with their wallets, that's correct. People are gonna buy whatever fires up the old dopamine receptors and avoid things made by people that piss them off. I'm not gonna sit here and argue with you about whether or not a robot can replace a human artist based on this immeasurable and ethereal value of soul. What I am going to say, however, is that you should care. Personally, I think art is about the endeavor, and I think what makes art so remarkable is the fact that it does take so much time. And I know non-artists don't care about that, and a long and arduous journey is antithetical to consumerism, but it's not just about that. This isn't just about art anymore. This is about something more threatening. AI is going to come for all of us. Art is just the first industry to fall, and you shouldn't be cheering this shit on. You're gonna be putting the fries in the bag soon too. Actually, no you're not. AI is already taking that one. Mostly what will be left will be in high-skill niches or in manual labor or agriculture. Are you smart enough to oversee or repair the automated technology that replaced you? Probably not. AI might create some new jobs for people that excelled in academics, but what about the people that didn't bother with degrees? For people who didn't go to college, and I don't blame you, my degree is currently better suited to be used as toilet paper. It's going to be difficult to train for anything else once AI takes your job, because there's also not going to be anything else. For coming generations, a degree is also not going to be worth shit, because kids currently enrolled in academic institutions are already using ChatGPT to cheat their way through school. When millions are left jobless, governments are going to have to start having some serious conversations about UBI. But if there's anything I know about government, it's that legislation is slow and impeded by bureaucracy and greed, especially when it involves money being used on citizens rather than the military. How many years of chaos are we going to have on our hands while we wait for the government to budge? Now let's say you finally get that UBI check. What will you become when all of your basic needs are met? Will you be okay not having anything to strive for? Will UBI improve your financial situation or cause you to become a perpetual slave to the state? The idea behind UBI is that it's meant to be padding so that things don't go completely south if you're not working, but it's meant to be just that. It's supplemental income, but you're meant to keep working. The studies done on distributing UBI have found that rather than using it as padding, people decided to just work less and not invest it in anything long-term, and it made them poorer overall. And that's totally understandable. Working is mad gay. But if you're given UBI and you don't also work to supplement that income, you're gonna be stuck forever in the bare minimum hole. Are you going to be okay with that? For some people, yeah, sure, but for others, the way that automation is going, what if you couldn't work if you wanted to because there's nothing left to do? What jobs are gonna be out there left for you? Is the UBI amount that you get going to be enough? Or is it going to increase the income inequality gap so much that it's no longer going to be crossable? And if the UBI is enough, what about you as a person? When all of your needs are allegedly met, now what? A lot of people stake their identities on their job. If you don't have a job, are you comfortable with who you are with nothing to do for enrichment or fulfillment? Have you ever heard of Universe 25? Universe 25 was an experiment conducted by John Calhoun in the 1960s that sought to study the effects of overpopulation on mice. The results were grim to say the least. Every single mouse in that experiment died. Overpopulation wasn't even the issue. These mice were placed in a utopia in which they need not want for anything. Unlimited food, water, and nesting materials were provided, and no predators were introduced into the utopia. And with all these amenities freely provided, the mice engaged in cannibalism and stopped reproducing. I know you're not a rodent, but as a human without work to find meaning in, will there be enough enrichment in your enclosure? I think I'll be okay. Art has always been something that extends beyond money for me, so maybe you'll take away my ability to get paid for my stuff, but I'll always be making things, and so will a lot of other people. I know who I am now as somebody who is currently not making money off of their art, and I'll always strive to become a better artist and know who I am, regardless of what generative AI is doing. But I don't really know how it works for people who aren't artists. If you're really passionate about your job and AI makes it so that your job is no longer necessary, are you okay with not being that person anymore? Will you be able to make your own enrichment? I'm genuinely asking because I see a future in which a lot of people just give in to extreme hedonism, like drugs and alcoholism, any other kind of substance abuse, gooning, just to pass the time. The debate about generative AI isn't just about whether or not human art inherently has meaning, it's bigger than that. Art is just the canary in the coal mine. The dissolution of art as an industry is like an allegory for how all of our lives are going to play out for the next 50 years. There will come a time in which visually AI art and human-made art will become visually indistinguishable, but the second that it's known that a piece of art was generated by an AI, its value is lost. It never had any to begin with. It was always a mockery of a true human endeavor. Sure, you can make the argument that it doesn't matter if you can't tell the difference, but doesn't it bother you that everything anybody has ever experienced is apparently so worthless that it's okay if we're all replaced by something that isn't real? A robot cannot yearn. A robot cannot love. A robot cannot hate. A robot cannot go hungry. A robot cannot have its heart broken. A robot cannot mourn the death of someone so much that it's removed from functioning as it did for months at a time, or ever again. A robot can only steal what has already been made and mash it into a sterilized amalgamated pulp and serve it back to you. And if you'd rather have the heavily manufactured contents of a chicken McNugget over a home-cooked meal just because it's cheaper and faster to produce, then there might be something wrong with you. It's going to undo thousands of years of our progression through history for a short-term monetary gain. Cheaper to produce doesn't mean companies will sell it to you for less. Companies aren't here to make your life easier, they're here to profit off of you. And when you too lose your job because a robot does it faster, how will that make you feel about yourself? If your efforts in life mean nothing because automation blows your skills out of the water, what is your identity? Will you exist only to consume things made by a machine? If we don't regulate it, if we don't slam the brakes on this just a little bit, what's going to be left for people? Despite everything, it's still you, but is that going to be enough? When the AI comes for you, and it will come for you, who will you be?